The Public Affairs Department of WCFL Radio presents Dick Biondi and Friends.
Thank you for joining us. This is Dick Biondi, and my friends are...
The Guess Who.
Fellas, let's find out a little bit about the Guess Who. You're from Canada, we know, and was your success overnight, or was it a long-term thing? I mean, did you work together for a long time? Well, how did you all get together and get started?
I think it was more of an endurance test than anything else. Just a matter of sticking it out until the right combination of things came along. Like, we got into the original music thing. Randy and Burton started really writing a lot of songs a couple of years ago. And we decided, well, there's no point in going on being a jukebox on stage forever, so we started doing the guys' material. And then we ran into our producers in Toronto, and they sponsored a session for us, and eventually we wound up in RCA Records, and that was the beginning. And when we first met you, just a little over a year ago, or about a year ago.
Well, let's get back further than that, if we can. Back to before you were even together, if... I don't mean together mentally, I mean together as physically as a group. You're from Canada. Whereabouts? Were you all different parts of Canada, the same town, or...?
Winnipeg, Manitoba, frozen wastelands. And we were all in different groups. We just drifted together locally from various groups till we ended up this way.
Most people say that this is the first big group, and I would imagine so, but I don't know. Has there ever been a group out of Canada that has achieved the success you fellas have?
I don't think so.
A lot of people jump on the bandwagon. They say, well, Steppenwolf is a Canadian group or something like that. Well, we don't really consider people that relocate permanently as Canadians. So there's four Canadians in the band. So what? They've been gone for years. I mean, they'll still talk about Toronto and everything, but they went through the whole New York management thing and everything else. And we're all still living in Canada. I don't know, maybe they are too, but as far as we're concerned, anybody that leaves is, more or less gives up their whole identity or mystique or what have you.
Fellas, what's the story behind your huge successful record, These Eyes?
It was just an album cut. We cut an album called Wheatfield Soul a year ago. That was just one of the songs on the album. I was very against it myself as a single. I was really hot. I didn't want our first record with RCA in the States to be a ballad, because nobody needs another Bobby Vinton. I was really hot. I figured, what are they doing? Why? Why? And then the sales figures taught me to keep my mouth shut.
It was the most commercial thing coming out of the session, and it was pretty apparent to everybody involved.
Yeah, being a new group, we had to have an immediate commercial appeal or bomb, Yeah. And we started, and I think we made good use of that record, because we're getting now to play exactly what we want and release exactly what we want. And, it's a good song. It's been recorded I think by 17 or 18 other people now.
18 times besides ours. And Junior Walker's...
Like every style. Junior Walker, there's Western versions. Johnny Mathis is doing it. And the Mills brothers, they're whipping it to death. But everybody with a different style is finding something out of those lyrics or the tune, and they're adapting it. And the song is a very adaptable song.
And very, very gratifying as a writer to have so many people cover your songs. Very gratifying.
These eyes. Somebody mentioned this a couple days ago in another interview we were doing, that they said they feel that the sound of the Zeppelins, the Steppenwolves, so forth, the loud, real, distorted, vibrating music is on its way out. Do you feel this?
I don't know. I think that you can become tired of a group like Zeppelin or particularly a group like 10 Years After, which is doing constant blues. I think that you need relief from this type of thing. It's like anything. You can't play the same type of music over and over and over again without, repeating. And I think that any group that has relief, that's what's so magic about the Beatles. They just go from here to there, and like there's no two songs that are alike, really. Yet there is a likeness in them because they have their own sound, Yeah,
I think when they say music like Led Zeppelin is going out, they mean that for the generality of groups who copy. I think there's always going to be Led Zeppelin. They're going to play their own music, just like Creedence. Yeah. But all of a sudden, a year ago, all the groups little groups stopped playing Hendrix and Cream and started playing Led Zeppelin at all the dances you'd go to around town. I think that's going out. The groups are looking for something new. But the group who started it, like Zeppelin or Creedence or Crosby, Stills and Nash, they're going to keep on with their own music. There's a place for it, which has been proven. As far as the groups who have to learn, like us, and we were learning, we copied Beatle things and old Buddy Holly and Cricket's things and everything else. And we changed. It went out for us because we found our own.
Yeah. That's true. There always be like leaders that'll influence local groups or groups to a lesser degree, and they're like a master mold for these groups sort of to take after, and then from there maybe they branch out and develop their own things. But like every year, the influences change, the big pace setters change, and that's more or less what changes the whole music, you know, from the year to year.
I think everybody, I think even us, we still are, we're still influenced by people, because unless you have stopped listening to other artists altogether, you can't help but be influenced by somebody, you know. If you're listening to music, you have to be influenced. If you like something, you may find it unconsciously creeping into what you're doing. You know, it's inevitable, unless, you know, you just shut yourself up from other artists completely. You know, I think all big groups do this.
Are musicians today, should they be concerned first with their musical sound, or should they first be concerned with entertaining the audience or communicating? Now, should they be entertainers and communicators, or should they sit up there and worry about whether they're hitting the right chord?
Gotta be both.
Gotta be both.
Gotta be both. But if you're a good enough musician, past a certain point, then you just are an entertainer.
You should have both, you know, if you're of any status. It's just like music. Even the most underground piece of material has to have some commercial element, or nobody will listen to it. Commercial to me means listenable, you know. And so even the most heaviest thing has to appeal to somebody, and then that's commerciality, you know. And you've got to have both.
Of course, I'm talking primarily of on-stage, in-person appearances. This is what we're talking about.
You know, I just drew that comparison because I think you have to have both. We've seen a lot of groups that come out on stage and stand there and play, and very few people can dig it, unless the group's got a string of giant albums or hit records. Then you listen to the music. But you've got to have a bit of both. You've got to talk to the audience. In our show, we try and do both, you know, and most of the groups that we've played with try and do both. But I think at some place like a pop festival, it's not expected, because it's such a big outdoors thing and everybody's very casual. A lot of groups don't say a word. But when you're playing indoors, it's kind of different, you know.
Yeah, it is.
The audience is there watching the stage. There's no other distractions. You know, the lighting and sound and everything is projecting from the stage, and you've got to give them something.
It's a captive audience, and they're saying, okay, entertain me.
One thing that is a drag, though, about what you mentioned is groups that'll try and compensate for little musical ability with flashy suits, groovy steps, jokes,
light shows, you know,
choreography and things like. You can't get by with all that. Light shows, flashy clothes, and a nice, well-rounded show with a few jokes for the, you know. Some people try and let that take the place of musicianship, which is bad. I think one of the best rounded-out acts I've ever seen, the most enjoyable things, was Crosby, Stills and Nash here. They were at, we saw them here, I guess it was in the fall, September or October.
Do you think that the bands, the singers today, are pricing themselves out of the business, or hurting the business with the exorbitant fees they're asking?
Some of them are.
Some of them have. The Rascals have. They're hurting. I think a smart group is like Three Dog Night. They get to their price, which is as much as they can get. Let's just say it's 10 a night or 15,000 a night, and they won't go over that, but they'll get a percentage of the gate, and they're still allowing that local producer or promoter to make some money for his initiative, for promoting and procuring and getting the hall and everything. But a lot of groups like the Rascals, they were like one of the big groups maybe 3 years ago. They went out of their minds. They made so much money, and they just raised their guarantees. And I think if you're big enough, all you need is a guarantee to make sure you're going to make some good money, and your percentage, which, you know, if you're as good as you think you are, you're going to make the money, and so is your promoter. And when you argue back and forth over the percentage, 60-40, 70-30, whatever it is, It's easier for the promoter to see where he's going to break even, where he's going to make his profit. But if you come in and you want 30 grand flat, or what does Bob Dylan or the Beatles want, they just don't want to play. You know, that's also a nice way of saying no.
A nice way of saying no. I think it started with
Presley.
Who was it? Well, Simon and Garfunkel's manager. I don't know if it's Grossman or whoever it is. Won't mention any names. But about 2 years ago, they stopped doing concerts, and whoever it was, he was a pretty smart cat, because he turned them into superstars, the caliber of which they never would have reached had they kept touring, had they been exposed constantly to live crowds. So instead of saying, okay, you want Simon and Garfunkel, 20,000, he said, like, they wouldn't want to play, so he'd say, okay, I'll give them to you for 75,000 flat, and the guy is going to say no. So it's the same, you know, it's just a means to an end. By asking exorbitant prices, he got them out of touring, playing live, created more of a public demand, and then their records started selling like crazy, and then the odd TV special or the odd guest shot, and it builds up a stature for an artist. You know, I don't think it'd work in every case, but with them it was a pretty good way to do it.
Creedence is sort of like that. What are they asking for pop festivals? About
I don't even know. The way I hear it, they're only doing 40 dates a year.
I mean, it's a way of saying no. Some people use it as a...
We played with Creedence at the LA Forum in November, late November, and they were on stage an hour, and they walked out with $55,000.
Which takes you 2 days to make that.
Well, 2 or 3. That particular day, we made less than a tenth of that, and we were ecstatic, because that was good.
That was good for us at the time.
Okay, guys, can you collectively pick one song that you really all dug, that maybe wasn't a hit or was a hit, that you really all felt the minute you did it, you said, we love this song?
I don't think we could agree.
I think
on
everybody
that.
likes everybody.
I change every week on one of my favorite songs of ours. You know,
one of my favorite is No Time.
Yeah, me too. I like No Time.
I think
that was a pretty collective favorite, because
one of the reasons I think we all like it so much is it was our first major hit that wasn't a ballad. You know.
Yeah, it was good. It had us singing and playing in it.
Yeah, everybody was singing, and it
we actually liked it so much. We had it on our second album. It was 5.5 minutes long. We thought it was so good, we redid it. Shorter, more commercial, left out some of the guitar work for a single. You know, and not many groups do that. And then again, it was on our third album, so there's 2 versions of it, one on our second album, one on our third album.
I think another reason why we like it is because I envision it, not almost, but very much like the Buffalo Springfield. You know, I get that feel from it. I think we all really liked the Buffalo Springfield when they were around. I think that's one of the reasons.
There's a lot of talk about young people today are protesting everything, it seems. You have any feelings on what's going down around the United States, I guess, and in Canada, because Canada's involved now with so many of our people up there. You know, how do you feel about what the young people are protesting against?
They've got very valid reasons for protest in certain areas. I think there's a general dissatisfaction with the young people. Basically, a lot of it has to do with the war, I think. Like, people a lot younger than us wake up one morning and they get a letter in the mail and it's time to go away. And with that constantly over your head and in mind that you'll have to go, maybe get shot down, you know, it leaves you wondering about other things, you know, the other things that aren't so good as well, besides the draft. In Canada, there's no conscription, so we're not really born with that hanging over our heads.
I think that because the people today, because they're so much hipper, so much more intelligent, because their education has been so much better, that they become aware of political situations at a very early age. And because of that, they haven't reached maybe a stage at which they have, well, maturity isn't a very good word, but anyway, they haven't realized what all the implications are in their own mind. So they lash out against the things in the society and the political aspects that they can't understand or they just can't fathom for the moment. I think it's a combination of two. It's almost like having mixed emotions, being in the know but not really. You see what I mean?
I think one of the biggest things, though, is that that the young people now, anybody with a mind of their own, is not just content with being told something by another human being. They want to know for themselves. Like, everything we're taught is told to us by other people, by other humans. But young people now want to find out for themselves, you know, about just about everything, about religion, about politics and all the dissatisfaction, you know, that's going down in the country, not just here in the States, but everywhere. And the whole movement sort of came about with the British rock boom. People identified with long hairs, and then they identified with new music, and it got bigger and bigger and snowballed. And now, I think the young people, they're not just content. They're just not content with accepting things that have been passed on generation to generation. If they find out things for themselves and they happen to be the same as the older people are telling them, groovy, then there are, you know, more understandings built up. But I think they want to know and they want to experience and find out their own set of moral standards, rules, whatever. I think that's why they talk about revolution, but like it's not a, you know, they're not really talking about a gun revolution. They're talking about a thinking revolution, I think.
No, I agree with Burton and Jim. I just think kids are growing up and they're, like Jim said, they're better educated and they become aware at an earlier age. And when these kids were born, just like us, there was the last war going on. And I just think they left a lot of things be in the country, and now the kids are growing up, and there's all kind of laws that are becoming obsolete. The narcotics laws, even the divorce laws, just a lot of things that need clarification or straightening out that were too general before, but there's more and more people breaking these laws.
Some people just protest for the sake of protesting. You meet them every day.
And they're not confined to North America. You know.
Sometimes you go too far. There's some kids in Montreal that wrecked a $2 million computer, threw everything out of 8-story window. Like that's a bit nuts.
There was 10 Trinidad students that were going to the college, you know, in Montreal, and they're all, along with about 80 other people, are all awaiting trial or what have you, or whatever they're going to do them. And meanwhile, off in the Bahamas or Trinidad or wherever these cats come from, they're bombing our embassy, man, because, you know, it's really a drag.
We have the same
anti-Canadian demonstrations, which was a new phrase to me. I had never heard.
We have the same problem in Montreal. There's the separatists that want to separate, the French Canadians who want to separate from Canada, and you can go and like we go there, and I say, you know, what is this all about? Why do they want? Why is all this arguing and fighting here? What do they want? And nobody knows what they want. Now that is stupid.
They want one lousy province in the middle of a Commonwealth country to become part of Mother France, and then the Canadians getting from Ontario to the Maritimes will either have to go through the States, or take a trip around the North Pole, or pay tolls to go through Quebec. Who needs it?
Okay, fellas, tell you what, let's move from political to musical thoughts. What's the story behind your latest smash, American Woman?
We'd been touring the States last summer for about 6 weeks straight. And then in the middle of it all, we were in New York State, and we had one day in Canada. We played New York State Thursday night. We had Friday night in a place, Kitchener, Ontario, and then Saturday night back into New York State. So after 6 weeks of the States, we came back home. It was our first Canadian booking after we had charted, you know, all the trades with These Eyes and Laughing. So we came back and we went on stage at the beginning of the second set, and like the crowd was really with us because they knew we had been away. It was sort of like a homecoming to Canada. We got on stage and they started playing this riff, just jamming around, and I just started singing American Woman because I had that feeling about being back in Canada. It was really a groove. The lyrics came out and we just did it, and we never changed a thing.
Fellas, before we close it off tonight, and I must say that this is probably one of the most enjoyable interviews I've had. It's easy to work with nice people. Is there anything that I haven't asked you, or anything you'd like to say that you haven't said to the people? Of course, we'll be getting into the eastern part of Canada tonight, so...
Far out. Hello, Canada.
Hello, Toronto.
No, we owe a lot to everybody, Canadian and American, for last year and this year.
We're very glad to be here.
Thanks for making 69 such a good year, and we'll try and make 70.
America's been very good to us.
Well, for Jim, Burton, Gary, and Randy of the Guess Who, Canada's primary group, we say thank you. To all of you, we don't have to wish you too much success because success is based on talent, and you all have that. What we do wish you is health, happiness, and peace.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dick.
Thank you for joining us. Tonight, my friends, have been the Guess Who. Engineering, Dave Schusler. Musical production, Nick Asherenza. This is Dick Biondi.
Dick Biondi and Friend, another service of WCFL Public Affairs.